What is going on, Lucid fans? Welcome back to Fanatic Journey. So earnings are right around the corner. I want to give you a good overview of more of a snapshot of the data points, technicals going into the earnings, expectations, everything that you need to know. Make sure you guys first hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Always greatly appreciate that. And with that said, let's get right to it. So currently it is at $6.58, down about 0.5%. It is kind of volatile, so the broader market is just wanting generally to go down. There is a little bit lower volume, but keep in mind today is Friday, and that's kind of the normal case. So 12.62 million shares being traded, 39.75 is the average. And at the time of doing this video, there hasn't been any actual news as of late. No press releases, no SEC filings, nothing like that. So when it comes down to it, people are just now on the edge of their seat waiting for the upcoming earnings. And when it comes down to the earnings, there was an article that did come out and it kind of gives you a good highlight on things. So I'm going to quickly go over this and see, based on what they state, if there's anything I would change. So as far as this, so they say disappointing deliveries for Q2, which of course they did state 1,404 vehicles being delivered and just over about 2,000 for production, which in reality, I do feel that this does raise concerns about demand, but based on a lot of the pictures that have been floating around, I feel that there is a fair amount of deliveries that were completed on an international level, just they weren't delivered to customers. But once again, I do feel that this upcoming earnings will be able to at least clarify if there is a true demand issue with the vehicles or if there was just kind of a gap in the delivery process. So definitely the upcoming earnings will be able to clarify that. In here, they do talk on the whole Aston Martin deal. So clearly Peter will go on a fairly long rant about that. I think I can almost guarantee that. But of course, I think that's a pretty good thing because Lucid has now found a new source of revenue, and that is from licensing. So I do feel that the whole Aston Martin deal might be opening up Lucid's eyes for a new realm of revenue to come in. So I think this is going to be a very good thing, and to hear Peter talk on that. As far as analysts, I do agree that based on this, there hasn't really been anything crazy. So as far as analyst ratings, nothing as of late, last being Bank of America, and that was on July the 17th, did put a $8 target. And as far as analyst forecasts given by estimates, nothing has changed over the last little bit. So I've given you guys good updates as far as that. So going into the earnings, there's 8 analysts that have given a consensus of negative 34 cents for earnings per share. My own estimate, who isn't a financial advisor, I do feel it's going to be a little bit lower because a lot of those international deliveries, earnings per share is going to take a very big hit on that. So I do feel it's going to be more so probably around the 36, 37 in my own opinion, negative of course. And when it comes to revenue, there is 7 analysts that have given a consensus of $184.84 million. And similarly, I do feel it's going to be a similar kind of in line with that, might be a tad lower, but that's just once again my own estimates. But going back to this article, so they're talking on analysts and how they've basically been neutral. Talks on technicals, which I'll go over in a second, and that's basically it. So that is kind of true. There's a couple of things other than this, what they have brought up, that they could talk on, and one of which is the Gravity. So this is all the vehicles that is basically coming out to the US in the coming years, and it is showing in 2025 right here, Lucid Gravity. So of course, they could definitely elaborate on that as far as the timeline, when that plans to come out and various things like that. And as well, it looks like, I think it was in 2027 right here, if I remember correctly. Yeah, right here. So Lucid Space EV. So of course that is that most likely that mid-size SUV. And that is one of the questions that is being posed to management from retail. And so that's going to be the first one. So the mid-size EV development, where that is at, and as far if they're planning on any other licensing based on the platform and things like that. So a lot of the good questions I feel, so we'll hopefully get an update on ESS, because based on at least previous forecast, it's supposed to be, I think, $22 or $23 billion as far as revenue by 2030. So definitely they do need to get on top of that. But one good thing that I have noticed is that there's a lot more pictures about this. And Faisal did a interview, I believe it was around 4 months ago, give or take. And he did say that the infrastructure in Saudi Arabia isn't necessarily the best. for obviously EVs to accommodate for that. So it's good to see kind of updates like this, the fact that they are having several charging stations. And I do believe that there's a rumor floating around that a lot of these charging stations are planning on having solar panels at the very top to kind of accommodate that. So I feel that Saudi Arabia is going to be moving very, very fast as far as their infrastructure. So definitely, I think that is a very good question as far as ESS. Question number 3, and just on a side note, they typically do only answer the top 3 unless they kind of feel bad. I think in Q2 2022 they felt bad and they answered like 5. But do you expect to increase delivery numbers in Q3? Very good question. In Q4 2022 they laid it completely out, and so far they've actually lived up to what they said that they're going to do. So I do feel that they're on track for their targets by the end of the year, which would show a boost in Q3 and even more so in Q4. So a lot of good questions in that regard. The only other thing I would really like to know about is, brand awareness and marketing, because I think that's one thing that a lot of these very good companies such as Lucid and Polestar that have a lot of good infrastructure, they're trying to reach many different markets. Again, when it comes down to marketing, that's one thing that you really need to focus on, especially if you are going into several different markets, one of which is, especially now, Lucid is going into China eventually. So hopefully we get an update for that, Europe and Saudi Arabia, and I guess the Middle East. So once again, I feel that marketing, this one would be a very good question for them to ask as well. But generally speaking, when it comes down to the actual earnings, I do feel, like I mentioned, a lot of the physical numbers won't necessarily be the best, but it's going to be their future guidance. That is what is going to really kind of spark the kind of momentum a little bit. So if there is a dip, it's going to get bought up very, very fast, especially considering they're going to be talking on the Sapphire, hopefully Gravity as well. So let me know you guys' thoughts. Do you guys agree with that? Disagree with that? One thing that I would like to see potentially as a question is kind of a little bit late to the game to get asked, but do they have a plan on fighting against manipulation and shorting? Because I have noticed quite a lot that a lot of the other EVs that were being very much heavily shorted, a lot of shorts started to kind of on its own accord start to take a step back. Whereas with Lucid, shorts have still been lingering. So I'll give you guys a good overview of that. So short score is currently 73, utilization is 75.09%. And looking right here, shorts are currently increasing 1.61 million shares. So they're kind of taking advantage of the broader fears right now. 21.49% of the free float's being shorted, 175.76 million shares overall are being shorted. Cost to borrow is just pennies still. But once again, speaking on manipulation, seeing cost to borrow minimum being negative, that is a very good indication that there's manipulation, right? So there's a broker physically paying people to short Lucid, which is very, very flawed in my opinion. As far as options activity, currently there's $905,000 in calls being purchased, 386 in puts. So clearly based on that, people are optimistic about going into next week around the earnings potentially. And I'll give you guys a quick overview of this for the chart. So this shows all the calls based on the expiry date, strike prices. Based on this, it is anticipated to go between the $7 to $8 range going into next week. So once again, this is only calls, so a little bit more optimistic. But when it comes down to options activity, it does not move the stock price. It is just merely a sentiment. So once again, just be aware of that. As far as some support and resistance points that you need to be aware of, with it being at $6.83, it is currently right below this S1. So there's a very strong resistance at $6.85. We'll kind of see exactly where that does close today at. And of course, $6.43 would be a very strong support, and $7.53 is that next big resistance. So we'll kind of find out to see exactly how things play out, whether it be closing above that S1 or below that. And once again, on a side note, let me know you guys' thoughts on the upcoming earnings. Do you think that it's optimistic, negative? What is your kind of viewpoint on the price range where it might go? Personally, once again, not a financial advisor, I do feel that it will go down to around the 650, potentially even lower than that as a immediate dip. But similar to what has happened over the last couple of earnings, it always happens like that, but gets bought up very, very fast, because clearly Lucid is on the radar from a lot of institutions. So there's been a lot of big buying over the last several days. And of course, if there is a substantial dip to potentially the low sixes, somewhere around there, then definitely that will be a steal of a deal, especially based on their future guidance. If they say that they're on track for their targets and they plan on really ramping up in Q3 and 4, then definitely that is going to be a very good indication. Things are going to go up. But once again, Let me know you guys' thoughts. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. On a side note, I am actually going to be live streaming the earnings, so just be aware of that. And even though Lucid does go up, down, sideways, all over the place, take advantage of amazing promos such as this. So link in the description below and also the comments. Completely free to sign up for an account. If you do throw $100 at it, you get 5 free stocks. Each stock is valued up to $2,000, plus you get a $50 cash reward. So this legitimately is one of the best deals that you can make. Link in the description below and also the comments. With that said, I appreciate you guys watching. Let's all make a lot of money on Lucid.